Vic's head was aching when he came to. His wrists had been hastily bound in front of him, and he was seated on a chair in the middle of a dark mahogany floor. He could see a man in an open kitchen talking on a phone. Vic's vision was still fuzzy, and he felt slightly nauseous from being thumped over the head, but could make out what the man was saying.
Got his hands bound pretty tight. Don't worry, he ain't going nowhere. Yeah, I'm gonna need you to free up a bed ASAP. I'm at the property across the street.
Vic turned his head to look out the window. Across the street was the well-manicured Amontillado Cemetery that was over 100 acres big and bustling with mourners. Vic began to stand. The man grabbed a gun off the counter, turned around and aimed it squarely at him. Don't fucking move. Sit. Yeah, call me back as soon as you can when there's an opening. The man hung up the phone. He ran his spent cigarette that had been dangling from his lips under the kitchen faucet, then tossed it in the trash. He opened the fridge and removed a beer. Help me out here. I'm curious as to why you broke into my house. Were you looking for drugs? Maybe money? Possibly jewelry? Did I somehow slight you in a past life? It can't concern the here and now because, to my recollection, I've never met you before. In fact, more specifically, what the fuck were you hoping to find in turning my office inside out, right up until I clocked your dumb ass in the head? Were you hoping to find proof of Daphne's whereabouts? Yeah, I know who you are. You're the PI that's fallen on hard times. Heard you got caught up in drugs. My informants have been giving me the heads up that a PI named Victor Yu has been looking for me regarding a recent disappearance, but couldn't give me a name. I'm guessing her family hired you, correct? Must have been desperate to hire a junkie. The man took a drink and placed the bottle on the counter. The truth is, I had nothing to do with her disappearance. Bitch cleaned out my safe and hightailed it out of here. I guess being a junkie looking for their next fix, your mind is susceptible to believing anything. The one person who knows the truth went missing. And let me reassure you, I had nothing to do with that. What you did do is fuck up. There's motion cameras all over the place and I get notified when someone's fucking sneaking around. So you and we're gonna just sit tight and talk a little, while my business associate across the street frees you up a room. The man grabbed the bottle and took another drink. Have you ever loved someone so deeply that if any misfortune befell them, you'd move heaven and earth to make things right? Vic asked as he slowly tilted his head upward with his hands bound, catching the man's gaze in his own. You have no idea the pain loved ones go through to get something or someone back. Someone close to their heart. Holy shit, you cliche spewing fuck. I'm spinning circles in my head trying to remember if I told you that you could say shit. Vic was hit on the left side of his head with a mean right. The man swung with such force that the necklace he was wearing popped out of his shirt. Vic managed to remain seated in the chair with a busted bottom lip. He watched as the man tucked in the necklace, then squatted low enough to be eye to eye with him. Next time, don't speak unless I give you permission to, the man said as he placed the barrel of the gun squarely in the middle of Vic's forehead. He pushed off it, violently whipping Vic's head as he stood back up. Regarding your question, as a matter of fact, I have. He tossed the finished beer in the trash, then pulled out a pack of cigarettes. Normally, I'd smoke outside, but you ain't leaving my sight. He placed a cigarette between his lips and lit up. I grew up in Texas with my two brothers, the oldest Frankie, the youngest Christopher. When I was around 9, our dad moved to Arizona and stayed with his brother. My uncle had told my dad he could land him a job as a truck driver, and true to his word, he did. 8 months later, my dad was able to save up enough for a house and move the rest of the family up there with him. Even though we had a house, we were still poor. There were 5 of us living under one roof. We had enough for food, supplies, clothes, and what was left paid the bills and mortgage, so we could fucking forget toys or games. My older brother Frankie, he picked up a paper route to make some extra cash, and I'd get up with him at the ass crack of dawn to help him deliver the papers before school. On weekends, we'd go house to house and see if anyone needed any yard work done. And that's how we made a little pocket money. You know,
When you're young, a little money seems like a lot to a kid.
The man took a drag from the cigarette, then continued.
Since we didn't have what other kids had, we had to find a way to entertain ourselves. So every day after school and after homework, we'd go ride these dirt trails that were past the end of our street. Weekends were a blast. All the neighborhood kids would be there and we were all cool with each other. Some of those days were scorchers, well over 100 degrees. And the sweat would be pouring down our balls and ass cracks, and our shirts were sticking to our backs. Plus, on Saturday, the ice cream truck would drive through the neighborhoods and each of us would buy a cone. The driver, well, he was a real creepy fucker. He was a tall, skinny, older dude with long, graying blonde hair, and he was bald on top. Looked like riffraff. You know, Rocky Horror Picture Show?
Vic remained silent.
He always smiled at me and the younger children while Frankie wasn't looking. Frankie never liked the guy. He said he gave him the fucking creeps. If Frankie ever caught the guy smiling and staring at us, he'd yell, "Just serve the ice cream, pervert." Said that the creep lived kinda far away in a rundown piece of shit. One time, heading home, he had rode past the guy's house. Said the creep jumped in the truck and followed him for a mile.
The man looked towards the ground and scratched his forehead while still holding the cigarette. He took a drag and walked out from behind the kitchen counter. He stood several feet away with the mostly smoked cigarette now dangling from his lips.
We knew we had to be back from the dirt trails before dark, but fuck it. Most of those days we were having a blast. We were always the last to leave. But we knew an ass whooping was coming anytime Mom had to drive up there to fetch us. She'd jump out of the car and start cussing up a storm so fucking loud, I'd swear she'd wake the dead, resting in their coffins. We'd follow her back on our bikes and
Where was your dad? Vic asked, his voice slightly above a whisper. The nearly finished flicked cigarette bounced off his cheek, just under his right eye. His vision went black as an immense pain shot through his head, from being hit over it with the butt of the gun. He collapsed to the floor and a thin stream of blood poured down the side of his face. The man placed the gun barrel under Vic's chin, then lifted it to get him to stand.
"What the fuck did you say?"
I was wondering, where
Was our
your
dad? He was a truck driver and hauled produce across the country. We only saw him 4 to 5 days out of the month. He took better care of that fucking rig than he did with us. And don't think because we hadn't seen him in a while that it was all hugs and kisses when he got home. Nah, when he got home, him and Mother would go at it. She accused him of cheating and sleeping with his whores in other states because when he came home he wouldn't fuck her, let alone touch her anymore. Frank hated him. He would ask him why he was there. He never took us anywhere or did anything with us. If we'd ask him to, he was always tired from working and needed to unwind. Yeah, unwind, even though he'd already been there a couple of days. You could find his fat fucking drunk ass planted in front of the TV, beer in one hand and the remote in the other.
The man opened the fridge and grabbed a beer. He popped it open and took a long drink. Vic's mouth had been dry for a while now, but dare not say anything else for fear he'd get another rap to his head.
Frank would always tell him, "Go back to your other family. Go back to the family you actually give a shit about." Mom and Frankie had their suspicions that he had kids and a woman in another state. I mean, you can only go on lying so fucking long that you can't keep your facts straight and wind up tripping over your own bullshit. I guess one time he slipped up and called my mom by another name while Christopher and I were at school. Frankie said he grabbed her around the waist just as she was about to stab the bastard with a fork. It probably would have been a bloodbath if Frank hadn't been sick and stayed home that day. Once, after a day of us racing around on the dirt tracks and getting ice cream from fucking McCreepy, Frank told us he was on the phone with Dad, and when Dad had to get off, he said, "Bye, Philip, love ya," and hung up. He always denied that anything was going on and that both my mom and brother were fucking delusional.
He took another long drink.
The last time we ever saw Dad was the night our mom cooked the last spaghetti dinner she'd ever cook again. Me, Christopher, and Frankie were watching some stupid horror flick in the living room when the phone rang. Our asses jumped when she slammed down the pot she was holding. Frankie hit mute after she started yelling, asking the person for their name. Then she threw the phone down when she couldn't get an answer, and we could hear her rifling through the kitchen drawers. Then her bedroom door slammed shut. She slammed that fucker so hard the goddamn house shook. Frank looked at us and said he thought he heard a woman's voice on the other end. 20 minutes later, guess who comes walking through the front door? And in an instant, Mom was on him like flies to shit. "Who's Linda? Is that your fucking whore?" Dad said he didn't know what the fuck she was talking about, then called her psychotic and paranoid, and that's why he didn't love her and wouldn't put up with her shit anymore. "You get the checks right," he would yell. "I'm still paying the fucking bills for the house, right? Still putting food on the table, right? Yeah, you're fucking welcome." Mom was shaking like a leaf, and her face. I had never seen her face that red in my life. But she didn't say shit. But he had to keep on prodding her. "Yeah, exactly. That's what I thought, you fat fucking cunt." Things happened so fast I can't remember anyone moving. All I remember seeing was the end of the steak knife sticking out the bottom of my dad's arm and Frank tightly hugging our mother as she was flailing about screaming. Christopher was hysterical, yelling "Mommy" and "Daddy." The next thing I remembered was hearing Frankie telling him to get the fuck out of here. Just go. Just go before I kill you myself.
Vic studied the man as he told his story. It looked to him that the man was close to tears.
Someone called the cops. My brother and Mom kept telling them that everything's fine. When they asked about the drops of blood on the floor, my brother said it was from clocking our dad in the nose because he had attacked Mom and hit her. The cops saw that no one home was hurt and that our dad was gone and chalked it up to self-defense and left. She wanted to kill him. Mom would have stuck that bastard right in his heart if he hadn't put up his right arm. Looking back at how that fucker tore us apart, I wish she had. We never saw the prick again.
He tilted his head back one more time, then threw the empty bottle away.
"So what about my dad? Fuck him. He was never around, and next time you open your goddamn mouth, I'll put one through it,"
he said to Vic as he turned his head to look out the window. The man looked lost in his thoughts as he watched people blissfully walk by, going about their daily business, unaware of what was happening just some several feet away. Vic watched as he walked from the window and back into the kitchen.
Frankie, he never cried. At least he never did around us. After several months of no checks from Dickhead, Mom had to pick up a second job. We also started receiving handouts from family and neighbors. She was grateful. We were grateful. But you could tell it was killing her, having to accept outside help. I think in her mind and Frank's, it cemented us as the poor white trash family on the block. The first couple of years without him were fine. Mom would wake us, we'd get dressed, eat, and she'd take us to school. But she couldn't pick us up anymore because she got out of her new job at 10 p.m. So we took the bus home after school. Frank would watch and feed us, made sure we did our homework and that we wiped our ass after every shit. Taking care of us two little shits took it out of him, and he no longer wanted to ride the dirt trails anymore. And if he didn't go, we didn't go because he couldn't keep an eye on us. That broke Christopher's heart.
Vic could see the tears welling up as the man continued to speak.
When Frankie turned 15, everything went to shit. He'd met a group of fucking losers in high school, and after several weeks you could tell he was using, but we didn't know what. Then after a couple more months, he stopped going to school altogether, and that destroyed our mother.
Vic thought he saw a tear streak down his face. The man took his phone out with his back slightly turned to Vic.
"How's the vacancy looking?" "Well, hurry the fuck up. If I have to go down the hall to take a piss, I'm gonna have to put him out of his fucking misery. Then you can help me carry the goddamn body since he won't be able to walk anymore unless he comes back as a fucking zombie. Okay, just try to speed it up."
He put the phone back in his pocket and faced Vic.
Frankie stopped coming home for days on end, and when he did, it was while she was at work and we were at school. So I became responsible for myself and Christopher. We were never to leave the house unless life or death. We were too young to be alone, and she didn't want anyone to find out. You know, Child Protective Services and all that bullshit. Then she began noticing small things missing and figured Frank was stealing now to feed his fucking habit. She had the locks changed and gave me and Christopher a new key, but that didn't stop him. He started stopping by after we got home from school, but before she got off her second job. I wasn't supposed to let him in, but if I didn't, he'd keep banging and cause a scene. Him showing up really upset Christopher. He always asked Frankie to stay and wished he could turn back time when we all rode our bikes together. He was using more and more, and it showed. His damn clothes were always dirty and he smelled like shit. Frank started not making any sense either. He was always going on about men in black, shadow people, and the house being bugged. He talked about Ouija boards and tarot cards and that he thinks he opened a gateway for evil spirits to come through and torment him. He even thought he was possessed. Wide-eyed, he'd ramble on about angels and demons, tossing a few back while having conversations about heaven and hell in his head. You know, fucking whacked out religious conspiracy screwball shit.
Mind if I have a drink of beer? Vic asked as his voice cracked harshly from not having anything to drink for a while. The man walked with a hurried pace, switching the gun over to his left hand. Vic's head snapped violently from the vicious blow he took to the face. A small stream of blood poured from his nose. His previous wound had stopped bleeding a little while ago.
"Open up, motherfucker!"
He rammed the gun into Vic's mouth.
"Say one more word. Say it. Come on, say something. Just utter one more goddamn word. Next word I hear, I won't hesitate."
He ripped the gun from Vic's mouth and walked to the fridge.
"But you know what? I'll have another."
He grabbed a beer and set it on the counter next to the sink. He washed the blood from his hands, then wiped it off the gun barrel. He placed both his palms flat on the counter and leaned forward.
"You know how this shit works, right? This shit has been eating me up inside and I need to let it out. Don't you want to hear the rest of my story? Aren't you the least bit curious? You can nod if you want."
Vic nodded.
"I want to unburden myself to you, okay? Without any more fucking interruptions."
He tore off several paper towels and threw them in Vic's lap.
"Here."
Vic grabbed them and tilted his head back. With his hand still bound, he pinched his nose with the towels. The man took a drink and continued.
"One day I had a surprise for Christopher. After we ate dinner and homework was finished, I asked him to go into my room and get my backpack. I had something for him. You should have seen his face when he opened it up. I got him a PS3. A PlayStation 3, man."
He repeated again as if to get Vic excited as he was.
Man, the smile on his face. I hadn't seen him smile like that in some time. A dude at school sold it to me super cheap, probably stolen for the price I took it off his hands. I had the money from the yard work and paper route, which I was still getting up at the ass crack of dawn to do.
He took another sip from the bottle while having the gun still trained on Vic.
Hanging out and playing games with Christopher helped push our miserable, shitty existence into the background. Over the next several months, I would pedal to the Redbox and get a new game after we beat or got bored of the old one. It was just a 15-minute trip. I mean, what could possibly happen in 15 fucking minutes? Whew. Is it just me or is the cigarette smell still strong in here?
He pulled out the last cigarette from the pack and lit up.
What I'm about to tell you happened on a Saturday. It was 9 a.m. and Mom was working overtime, so it was just me and Christopher. I headed out to the Redbox to return the game and get another. I got there and I reached in my pocket and grabbed the game. When I opened the case, there was nothing there. My dumbass had left the disc in the PS the night before. You can imagine how pissed I was.
He stopped and looked over Vic's bloody body, then nodded.
"Yeah, you can." When I got back onto our street, I saw someone a little ways away on the bike heading towards me. The rider's hoodie and bike looked like Frankie's. It had to be him. But he quickly cut left into a yard and went between the houses. I hightailed it the rest of the way home. I walk in and find Christopher balled up and crying on the floor. I'm asking him what happened. He said he got out of bed because he heard a noise and saw Frankie taking the PS3 and putting it in my backpack. He told me Frankie kept saying he was sorry, that he just needed it for a little while and that he would bring it back. Christopher was a mess. He was trembling all over. He said Frankie looked sick and his eyes were gray like a zombie's. That he had scabs on his face and his teeth were black. That fucking bastard. He must have gotten in through a window or unlocked door. I wanted to kill him right there. To think what it did to Christopher. I knew two things. A, he wanted to get rid of that shit as soon as possible, and B, his scumbag drug-dealing friend Carrie lived 3 streets over. My brother and Carrie were real close in junior high, so I'd been to his house a couple of times. I told Christopher to lock the door and all the windows. I took the steak knife from the kitchen, wrapped it in a hand towel, and hopped on my bike. Carrie's house was in a cul-de-sac, and behind those houses was a small forest that was separated by a wooden fence. His back screen door had a doggy door for his Rottweiler, but his girl took the dog and left after finally realizing what a scumbag he was. I was betting that being a hardcore junkie and a fairly new drug dealer, that he didn't get around to fortifying that piece of shit house. I passed his street on my bike and took a left into the forest, and followed along the fence until I was behind his house. I leaned my bike against the fence. I climbed up a tree that had a branch long enough for me to jump off into his backyard. Pretty fucking convenient, right? A drug dealer, getting high on his own shit and easy access into his house. It's a miracle this motherfucker's never been robbed or killed.
The man took a long drag while smiling.
When I was in his backyard, I saw the doggy door and was right in thinking he still left his main back door open because he walked in and out a lot when he smoked. I quietly ran and pressed my body against the house. I started looking in all the back windows. 2 looked into bedrooms and the 3rd was right over the kitchen sink. I pressed my ear against the house as hard as I could. Under the far right window, I thought I heard talking, but I couldn't see anybody in the room. But it's now or never, I figured. I got down and slowly pushed my head through the doggy door and listened. I didn't hear shit, so I pulled myself the rest of the way through. It was tight. If I was an inch wider, I would have been stuck like that fat kid in the chocolate factory.
Vic stared with a blank look on his face.
It opened right into the kitchen. I crouched low to the linoleum floor, and straight ahead I saw the living room. My heart was beating out of my chest as I slowly crossed the kitchen. Then someone yelled, "What are you doing?" I nearly pissed my fucking pants. I gotta take this. Don't go anywhere.
The man pulled out his phone and stepped into the hallway.
15 minutes? Yeah, okay. Yeah, he's fine. I'll drive around to the back entrance. He'll be in the trunk.
He placed the phone back in his pocket.
Where was I? Oh yeah, what are you doing? I froze and almost shit myself. I was waiting for the barrel of a gun to press against my head, but it didn't happen. I looked to the right, and at the end of the hallway was a shut door and a light was coming out from the bottom. Then I heard Carrie saying, "I told you not to go there. He's not my friend anymore. Are you trying to fuck him? Is that it?" The echo? I'm in the bathroom. I realized he was having a lover's quarrel while on the shitter. I quickly got up and walked into the living room, and there was my brother Frank, laying across the couch with a goddamn needle still in his arm.
The man took a couple of drags, then flicked the ashes off.
His eyelids were barely open. I thought of Christopher and I smacked him hard across his face and just started shaking him. I wanted his spine to snap. He was still there, but barely. I was yelling at him, but like in a whisper. I hit him again and was telling him what he did to Christopher and how much of a piece of shit he was. He barely got out my name. I kept asking him to say he was sorry, but he wouldn't. And let me tell you, I snapped. I reached in my back pocket for the knife, and wouldn't you believe it, it wasn't there. I guess someone up above, or below, was looking out for Frankie. I heard the bathroom door open and had a goddamn heart attack. There was a solid granite table in the middle of the room, about 2 to 3 feet high, with drugs and paraphernalia all over it, and I barely squeezed under that fucker. He was still on the phone arguing with his chick pretty loudly. Carrie walked into the kitchen and I heard the fridge open and bottles clanging and knew that his back was to me. I crawled out, got up, and quietly went down the hall he just came out of. When I got to the end, I saw a door open to the right and went in to hide. I was gonna hide under the bed in the room, and as I knelt down, I saw the backpack. Can you believe it, man? I guess people do hide shit under their bed. I grabbed it just as I heard the back screen door open and what the fuck? Whose knife is this? I heard him come back inside and just thought, go for it. Get out of here or he's gonna kill you. I hopped on the bed and tried to open the window. As he was walking down the hall, almost to the room, I got it open. I ran across that backyard so fast that I almost leaped over the fence in one jump. My foot hit halfway up and I pulled myself over the rest of the way. I landed, grabbed my bike, and hightailed it out of that son of a bitch. I followed along the fence, took a right, got back onto the street, and hauled ass home.
He grabbed the bottle from the counter and took a drink, then continued.
As I got closer, I saw the ice cream truck in the middle of the street, stopped in front of our house. Christopher had his hands on the counter and he was talking to the creep. Then I see him walk out of view to the back of the truck and I started yelling his name. Right as I got to the truck, I leapt off the bike and ran to the back. What the fuck's going on here? You should have seen that creep's face. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. Bastard started fumbling his words, saying that he was just giving him ice cream, that's all, nothing was going on. Christopher was about to take a bite, and I snatched it right from his hand. You don't have the money to pay for this, I told him. Christopher said it was free, that he was looking out the window waiting for me, and the truck stopped in front of our house. Then he said the man waved at him and said free ice cream. I gave that creep the fucking stare of death, then yelled at Christopher to get inside. I handed him the backpack and he walked to the door. Then the creep started running his fucking mouth. I saw your mother's car wasn't in the driveway, so I knew she wasn't home to give him money. I told him to get the fuck out of here. If Frankie was here,
He paused for a second. His eyes moved left to right as if scanning Vic's face for a reaction.
You know what he says to me? He says, "Who? You fucking junkie, brother? He'd do what exactly?"
Vic watched the man, and to him it looked as though he was thinking about something, as if more to the story, but finished with,
He said, "Enjoy your ice cream," and then I turned around and headed inside. So don't tell me what I would and wouldn't do, and the sacrifices I'd make for a loved one.
The man saw the expression on Vic's face, as if asking, "Is that all? Is the story finished?" He polished off the bottle and ran the cigarette under the faucet, then tossed them in the trash. He pointed the gun at Vic and spoke.
Anyways, you know the drill. I'm gonna put the blindfold back on
so you don't see what I'm doing. You'll just feel it, Vic said, finishing the man's sentence. He froze in his tracks. The deepest chill and a dread so unfathomable, so suffocating, had washed over his very being. His entire body began shaking uncontrollably.
Wait. What did you say?
The creep. Isn't that what he told you when putting the blindfold over your eyes?
How did you...
Isn't that what you told Frank? The man's vision began shrinking inward as Vic's lips kept moving, but he was hearing nothing. He remembered taking 2 big bites of ice cream off the cone and almost immediately felt woozy. It had tasted acrid and bitter and knew something was very wrong. He could see his house just up ahead, but it was fuzzy and tunnel vision had set in. Almost to the door, he thought, with his arm outstretched. The last thing he'd seen was Christopher yelling and banging on the front living room window. He fell to his knees as arms wrapped tightly around his chest. Everything went black, and his feet lifted off the ground. He awoke with a creep standing over him, grinning. Over the next several hours, he was subjected to every whim of the monster that held him captive. Every time the creep finished taking what he wanted, the boy would be tossed like a rag doll back into the dark, soundproof cellar without food or water. And every time he would pray and plead to the heavens for a miracle. He prayed through endless tears to angels, to God, to anyone, and after a while, to the devil himself. He promised to be good and to never hurt another living soul. If someone, anyone would answer his prayers. For now he knew what hell was and wished it upon no one. "I'ma put the blindfold back on you so you don't see what I'm doing. You'll just feel it," the creep repeated every time he was brought from the cellar. His mind kept replaying over and over what was happening to him, and he couldn't take it anymore and wanted to end it. The 4th time he was pulled from the cellar, he knew it was dark outside, for sunlight no longer cut through the veil of the blindfold. And with the light went hope, and with the darkness came despair. The blindfold took away his sight of the horrors that befell him, but not the agonizing touch. He was going to try to use the blindfold somehow, anyhow, to hang himself the next time the creep left him alone in the room. He was thrown over the edge of the bed again, stomach down. He gritted his teeth for what was about to happen. The creep let out a groan, as if in pain, but the boy felt nothing. Then something wet began dripping all over him. "You forgot your knife, little brother," said Frank, his left arm around the creep's neck as he thrusted the blade upwards once more, piercing all the way through the creep's back and out his chest. "Don't worry, Tim. I'm here. It's over. I stuck him from behind just like he did to you." Tim pulled down the blindfold to see Frank staring back at him. Not the Frank he remembered, but a shell of his brother that was almost unrecognizable. His wide smile revealed black, rotting teeth, and his eyes. His eyes were glazed over, their color drained from them, almost gray in appearance. But that didn't matter. Tim wrapped his arms around him and sobbed uncontrollably. It took some effort for Frank to get him to his feet. As they walked out the room, Frank turned to look at the wide-eyed, blood-soaked corpse laying on the floor. "See you soon," he said. Sight and sound that were a jumbled mess of indistinguishable noise and color started to refocus and cohere. Tim stood frozen with his arm outstretched, the gun pointed directly at Vic's head. His peripheral was coming back, but his vision was still blurry and tears streamed down his face from the remembrance of horrors, prayers, and promises so long ago. Who told you my name?" I can only imagine what you went through, how that would affect someone for the rest of their life, and the path it would lead them down. You were so young, still a child. It's a good thing when I got back. I mean, when Frankie got back to the house looking for you. Christopher had seen what happened. He had seen who'd taken you. I heard your cries in the dark, the desperation. I told Frank where the monster dwelled. How did you know what happened to me? I thought this was supposed to be cathartic. Come on, Timmy. Isn't this what you wanted? This isn't possible. You promised to be good. Who told you? Frankie did. The barrel of the gun slammed hard against Vic's temple. Frankie's dead. He put a gun in his mouth 5 years ago. Who told you? I already said. Frankie did. When that junkie let me inside his head. Tim squeezed the trigger and a shocked look spread across his face as the gun failed to fire. Vic rose from the chair with his right palm open, revealing the smoldering, almost finished flicked cigarette. The rope that had bound his wrists was burnt almost the whole way through. His left hand shot out, smacking the gun, sending it flying against the wall. Then the used cigarette and rope fell to the floor. Vic stood eye to eye with Tim. I never liked guns. So impersonal. So I fixed it. Wait, I know where Daphne's buried. I know where she's at. Isn't that what you wanted? I never said I was looking for her. I was looking for the key to unlock the door that's hidden under the rug. Vic yanked the necklace from around Tim's neck and dangled it at eye level. The necklace wasn't actually jewelry, but a key on a chain. Vic placed his hands on either side of Tim's head. I'm not here for her. I'm here for Vic's brother, whom you have locked in the cellar. Please, I can explain. Shh. I hear his cries, just as I heard yours. And you didn't keep your promise. Tim saw that the color was almost drained from Vic's pupils, that they were glazed over and a shade of gray, just like Frankie's, so long ago. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed. Until next time.